I've been interested in adding Vim key support into LibreOffice for quite a while now, and I have no idea how I didn't come across this plugin earlier. So what we're looking at today is a LibreOffice plugin called VibreOffice, which, as the name would suggest, adds Vim emulation into the LibreOffice suite. Now, I'm mainly going to be using it in Writer today, but it does also work in most of the suite. I haven't tested in everything, but in Writer and Calc, it works basically perfectly. Now, ultimately, this is Vim emulation, so unlike something like, say, VS Code, which runs an instance of NeoVim in the background, this does have to make some adjustments to make it so it actually works inside of a rich text editor, but the adjustments it makes aren't really that bad, and a lot of them actually do improve the workflow. Now, before I can show you any of the movement keys, we first need to add some text in. So there's a couple of ways we can get into insert mode. We can use I, A, capital A, O, and capital O. Now, with O and capital O, they do technically work properly, but you do have to do a little bit extra to make them behave exactly the way they should be. So anyway, I'll show you that in just a moment. So if we go and press I, that'll take us into insert mode. So this is a line of text. And if you never realized what the difference between I and A was, basically I is going to start you typing on the left-hand side of your cursor, and A is going to start you typing on the right-hand side. So let's go and press A this time, and let's say this is some more text. And then if we press capital I, that will start us typing at the start of the line, and likewise capital A will start us typing at the end of the line. Now, as for capital O, it's going to do this. So it looks like it's made a new line for you to type on. So let's go and start typing. And as you're going to see, it merges them together. Now, it has typed it in the correct location. So if you just go and press enter, it will go and fix it. It's just a bit of a weird bug that this has. And the same thing happens with lowercase o as well. So it's fine if we're on a line like this and we want to make the line on the next line. But if you do it between two lines, so say right here, it looks very similar to what capital O did. And if we start typing, as you can see, it puts it on the same line, and you have to go and press enter to put it in the right place. Now that we have some text, we can go and move around. So HJK and L work basically as you would expect them to. There is a slight difference. So in the case of H and L, they will actually line wrap. Now, whether you like this or not is sort of up to you. It makes a bit more sense inside of a rich text editor like this, where you typically have text that flows on between lines much more than you have if you're using a plain text editor. Also with J and K, they might not always move into exactly where you expect them to move to, but it will move you between the different lines. You can also do things like W and capital W, however, they don't behave 100% perfectly. So in the case of lowercase w, it's supposed to ignore symbols when it jumps between words. It doesn't actually do that here and treats this as one whole word. It's not as big of a deal inside of a rich text editor like this, because you typically won't have as many times like this, but it would be nice to actually have them behave as they should. And the same is true for doing things like B and also capital B. But we can go and jump to the start of a line by using the caret symbol, and the end of a line by using the $sign. Now, because we are in a rich text editor, if the lines do wrap, like say something like this, these are treated as two separate lines, whereas inside of Vim, this would be treated as one massive line. Now, jumping between paragraphs is also treated a little bit differently. So inside of Vim, if you jump between paragraphs with a curly brace, there needs to be a line break between them. Inside of this, though, that's not the case. There just needs to be another line. So if we go and jump between those, as we can see, it's like this. Now, I believe it's like this because sometimes you'll just separate paragraphs with a thick bottom border rather than having a whole line break. We can also use Control U and Control D to scroll up and down the page. Now, inside of Vim, these would be configured to scroll down half the page. Inside of this, though, it seems to scroll a third of the page. I don't exactly know why it's a third, but that's how it is. I haven't shown you it yet, but we do have access to visual and visual line as well. So these work as you'd expect it to. So let's just go into visual mode, and we can go and select stuff as you would in a visual mode, and visual line lets you select the entire line. When it comes to doing searches, pressing slash or question mark is going to do the built-in search inside of LibreOffice. So slash is going to be a forward search, question mark is going to be a backward search. I don't need to show you how those work. They work as well as they do normally inside of LibreOffice. As for doing F and capital F though, so those are for searching for a character on a single line, If you go and press F, you might not be able to notice it, but it shows a little modifier down here. So if we go and then press another character, so let's say A, it'll jump us directly to that, and capital F is going to be in the other direction. As for T and capital T, they're also here as well, and they do as you'd expect. They jump you to the character before the one that you search for. So let's go and search for X, and it jumps me to the E here. A lot of the deletion stuff is here as well. So obviously we could do things like X, but we could also do something like D, and then say delete the character to the left. We could do things like, say, C, which will change the character in the direction we decide to change it in, and that puts us into insert mode. We can do S, which will delete the character we're on, and then put us into insert mode. We can do capital D, which will delete the rest of the line from after where our cursor is at. We can do capital C, which will delete the line and then put us into insert mode. We can do capital S as well, which will delete the entire line and put us into insert mode. We can do DD, which will delete the entire line. And we can also do CC as well, which will delete the entire line, but put us into insert mode. That is honestly most of what you'll need to do. But you can even go and combine stuff and do things like, say, delete in brackets. Now, when it comes to doing things like delete in quotations, or changing quotations, or anything like that, it doesn't exactly work, because inside of something like this, it uses these special quotation marks, which are different from the plain text ones. So I know there is a way to type the plain text ones, and the plain text ones do work. However, these ones right here, they don't work. Undoing and redoing seems to work in the LibreOffice way rather than the Vim way, but they are bound to the correct keys, so even though it is like that, you can still basically get used to it. And we can also do copy and paste as well on the keys you'd expect them to be on. So let's say we want to go and copy this section right here, go and press Y, then go and paste it here, and it works like a copy and paste. I don't think I need to really explain too much else about that. And the last thing I want to talk about for functionality is we can also use number modifiers as well. So we can do things like, say, 3W, which will jump us 3 words ahead, or we can do something like 4FO, which will jump us to the O that is 4 O's ahead, and you can go and combine those with basically all of the commands that we saw earlier. I did mention at the start this works in Calc as well, and it works about as well as you'd expect Vim keys to translate over to a spreadsheet editor, so we can go and say, like, edit some text here, type in some data, and we can go and delete this data. It does pretty much what you'd expect. Now, if you want to install this yourself, the easiest way to do so seems to just be going to the GitHub page, downloading the latest extension file, and then running it with LibreOffice. And when you do that, LibreOffice will just use its plugin manager to go and install it, and it should start magically working. Now, when it is installed, you do actually need to go and enable the plugin. So the way you do that is by going into your tools and going down to add-ons and clicking on VibreOffice Start. Now, you can go and bind keys to this as well, but if you go and bind it to VibreOffice Toggle, Toggle doesn't actually work. It will enable the plugin, but it won't actually start working. So you're going to have to go and bind the key to start and stop independently. The only other thing I want to mention for this is when the plugin is active, you can't actually use any of the standard key bindings inside of the LibreOffice suite. So, for example, inside of LibreOffice Writer, there is a binding to go and increase the font size. That doesn't work while the plugin is actually active, so you have to go and disable the plugin, run the key binding, and then re-enable it. Also, this plugin is still very much an alpha and has been in and out of development multiple times over the 6 years that it's existed. So, right now, there seems to be sort of a maintainer, but I don't know if he's going to keep working on the project. So I think that's going to be pretty much everything for this. Before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Chris, Joachim, Donald, Michael, Andre, Nathan, David, Montezal, Will, Brennan, Chico Bento, Jamie, Joseph, Mitchell, Pididoo, Tony Tushar, and all of my $2 supporters. If you'd like to go support my work, there are links down below to my Patreon, Subscribestar, LibrePay, all of that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere, and then this channel is available on Odyssey, Library, and BitChute if you want to watch on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out. I just bumped my mic.